Hello, welcome to another edition of Curtis Jones Writing. I'm on my third book, and I'm on chapter 7 of the third book, which is entitled Reflections of Desire. And I wrote this story when me and my wife lived in Florida, and she liked to go look at secondhand stores. I generally call them junk stores, but uh, she really liked doing that, and I loved her, so I would go with her. But this talks about how I really felt about going to secondhand stores. I think you'll enjoy it, and let your husbands watch it. I'm sure they'll identify with it. If you like what I do, if it's the first story that you've read or heard me read, uh, understand that I'm doing this to all the books I've written. I've got 14 books published, and I decided that I wanted to put them on YouTube one chapter at a time. So I done Dad's Old Truck Volume One with 10 or 12 chapters in it, and Dad's Old Truck Volume Two also the same. And the third book was Imagination. It had to go after Dad's Old Truck One and Two before I started doing uh, the next series of books, which is Love Endures All Things, comes in three books. The first 15 years, myself and Stephanie were married. The second one includes the second 15 years we were married. And the third one is Love Endures All Things, The Deep South. You will enjoy those books when we get to that. But I wanted to include this book in because it has some introductory chapters that go between Dad's Old Truck 1 and 2, which tell the first part of my life, and the Love Endures All Things series. So, and it's got a little bit of everything in this one, some fantasy, some reality, and it's just a fun book. Chapter 7, Reflections of Desire by Curtis Jones. And this was probably written in 2009. I don't like to go to junk stores, which my wife calls antique stores. To me, they are full of someone else's junk. I didn't find them interesting at all. So when Saturday afternoon came around and I was compelled to follow her to the shops, I went without complaining. I learned a long time ago that when the woman wants something, you had better go along or be prepared to pay the price. You had better act as though you enjoy the outing too, as though it fulfills some longing in your heart as well. Women are much different than men in that way. Know this, or pay the price of a cold shoulder, and it will be exacted. The day was wearing heavy on me, and the ability to appear to enjoy the outing was becoming more difficult to convey. I was sure my wife would recognize my growing disinterest. I kept thinking I could have been home with the game on and holding a cold one in my hand. Instead, I'm in my jeans and a shirt and wearing my walking shoes, my old athletic t shirt and sweats and flip flops still behind the bathroom door, as if it were not Saturday afternoon at all. As we went from one shop to another, I began to look around a little more to break up the boredom when something caught my eye and I was drawn to it. It was a little box that looked like a cabinet maker had built it. It was made of rosewood and had inlays of different colored woods. It had strange carvings on the side and on the top. I turned it over to see if there were any on the bottom, and half expected to see some there too. The bottom simply had the carving of a pyramid, large enough to contain the carving of an eye within the outline. All this was centered on the bottom. The eye was in such detail that I felt as though it was looking at me through my soul. I had to have this little box. The lady said $280 when I asked the price. I almost fainted at the suggestion of that price. My wife came over and she had several items in her hand and asked if I liked the box, to which I replied it was too much to pay for my taste. She took the box and what she held in her hands and began to negotiate with the shop owner, and soon they agreed on a price for the box for $145. I was happy to agree with that price. I would have the box after all. The cashier then wrapped the box in some tissue paper and placed it in a bag by itself, and I took charge of the bag. The box was only about 8-inch square and had a pair of wooden hinges and the wooden twist lock like we used on our shed out back. Although it was much more ornate in its detail and had tiny images from end to end, the twist lock fit perfectly through the hinge opening. I could tell that very much work had been done to perfect this lock. It fit together like a precision timepiece. The artisan was talented and it showed. I looked at the wooden hinges on the back and they worked as well as any well oiled metal hinges could work. The hinge on the back had been covered or carved to look like leaves, and they were of a different kind of wood. The box was quite heavy for its size. We went to a couple more shops, and I searched as enthusiastically as my wife did at both those shops. She may have hooked me on the idea of antiquing, although I would never admit it. I left the prize box in the trunk of my car as we shopped the day away. When we arrived home, I helped unload the trunk and put my little box on the desk until morning, when I could fully examine it. I put a caption for the next part of the story. It says, The Examination. After breakfast, we each parted to admire our newfound treasures, she to her workroom and I to my office chamber. I carefully unwrapped the antique box and I began to look at it with a magnifying glass. It was more wonderful than I had thought it to be. The detail was as fine under the magnifying glass as it appeared to the naked eye. I realized I had more than just a common treasure. I had something that could be called magnificent. I knew I had indeed gotten a bargain at this price. We had opened the box at the shop to make sure there was nothing extra inside. The prize had only a beveled glass mirror on the lid of the box. The box was covered in beautiful deep purple velvet lining that looked royal and it was pristine. It looked as if it had been manufactured yesterday. The whole box was in wonderful condition. The shop owner said it had been made in the 40s, but I think it was much older than that. As I opened the box, I turned it upside down, and a flap of the velvet fell out across the front of the box. It had been covering, it had been the covering on the bottom of the box, and when it fell from the box, it was still attached to the front of the box. It revealed a second mirror on the bottom. It too was a beautiful mirror with beveled edges that, under the intense light of my office, a revelation was made. The edge had Greek lettering that was not visible at the shop nor on the mirror top. The lettering went all the way around the edge of the mirror. I called a friend of mine that could read Greek and asked for his help in deciphering the words that went around the mirror. I hurriedly copied the letters as best I could and went to his office to let him give me the interpretation. On the top of the mirror were the words, "Look upon yourself." The right side said, "Conjure change." On the bottom were the words, "The double reflection," and on the left side, the words, "Change comes." This was the direct translation from the Greek to the English language. I wrote the words down so I would not forget them. I might need to know them someday. I thought it might be some kind of black magic chant. My friend asked what it meant and where did I see this. I lied to him and said it was in a book, and curiosity got the better of me. I thanked him and I went home. When I got home, we had to run errands and we would be gone most of the day. So I laid the interpretation next to the little box and we were off. When we returned, I rushed to the box to see if the interpretation opened some other mysterious hidden chamber in the box. I now realize that seemed a silly thing to do, but when you get caught up in a moment, you forget logic. I set the box in front of me as I stood by my old wooden desk chair. It made a mournful squeak when I leaned upon it. I opened the box with some care and carefully looked at the mirror. It had not changed from its original appearance. I had half expected it might have. After all, the words had been uttered, even if it was at my friend's house. I had been a good looking young man before the fire 5 years ago, which had scarred my face. It wasn't bad, and people didn't shy away from my looks. I longed to look like I once did. I guess you could say I was a little vain when I was younger, and after the accident, I felt very ugly for a long time. Until one day, my wife convinced me that what was beautiful about me can't be seen on the surface of my skin. It was inside and invisible to the eye, but somewhere inside that vanity still lived within me. As I stood there, I looked upon the note with the words and began to speak them. Look upon yourself, conjure change, the double reflection, change comes. I looked only on the note as I said these words. Nothing happened, and I thought to myself, am I being silly or what? Do I really believe in magic? Of course not, was my reply, but still, somewhere in my mind, I could still see the possibilities. I gave a little chuckle and drew a deep breath as if to say, okay, that's done. But I still wanted to try once more. This time I looked directly into the mirror as I held the box to my face and said these words: look upon yourself, conjure change, double reflection, change comes. Nothing happened again, but I felt a strange sensation on my skin as I spoke, but there was no difference in my appearance, and the world was as it was before I had spoken the words. Then I realized the third line said the words double reflection, and I took the flap that covered the second mirror away and exposed the bottom mirror. I held the box so as to see the reflection of myself in the second mirror from the first mirror. I said the words with more conviction this time, as it was louder and more intense. Look upon yourself, conjure change, the double reflection, change comes. I stared into the reflected image for a couple of minutes and didn't see anything that had changed about my face. My wife asked, What was what was I muttering about? I said, Nothing, honey. I began to laugh at myself for having thought I could do magic, and I put the translation in the box, and I closed the lid and placed it upon the top shelf of my desk. It was still a wonderful looking little box that held my interest. The next subtitle is The Discovery. Several weeks had passed looked before I took the box down to admire it again. When I opened the box, all of the feelings that maybe I could do magic rushed back to me. I decided to try one more time to see if anything could or would happen. I mostly doubted it would as I sat at my chair and opened the box to reveal the two mirrors. I unfolded the note with the translation and looked at it a long time and quite hard with a mind full of doubt. I remembered what my father had said about beauty. It was only skin deep, and to seek it was a striving after the wind. But I still wanted to change what I now looked like, so I was willing to try one more time. As I opened the box, I was thinking of what I would change about my face and pulled back the velvet flap over the bottom mirror and looked at my face as and thought about what I used to look like. It seemed like a lifetime ago. I began to say the words more slowly this time as I had such doubt. I said, look upon yourself. And as I said the words, I really looked at myself to see all the wrinkles from my scars and even some age spots from my years of life. I took a deep breath and turned the box so as to see the reflected reflection of my face as I spoke the second line of the interpretation. Conjure change. I once again began to feel the sensation on my skin as I continued to look deeply into my reflection. I quoted from the translation, the double reflection. I held the box tightly as I peered into my own face. The box seemed to vibrate as I looked at myself, and I thought I was feeling my hands trying to go to sleep as I held the box so firmly in my hands. I uttered the last phrase without batting an eye. Change comes. All of a sudden, the box no longer vibrated and it felt warm to the touch. I was still looking at my own reflection when I felt my vision had weakened in some way because my face seemed to be clearer and the age spots seemed to fade to be a little less visible. I first thought I was that it was wishful thinking on my part. I set the box down and got up and rushed to the bathroom mirror. The much smoother face looking back surprised me. The age spots were about half as much as they were before, and I felt a lift in my spirit that I hadn't felt since before the accident. The next subtitle is Little Steps. I memorized the words at once, so if I lost the paper with the interpretation, I would not lose my greatest prize. I may also have wanted to keep this to myself alone. When I came to the table for lunch, my wife noticed that I had a clearer skin and that my spots were subsiding. I told her it might be the bright light in the kitchen that makes it seem so. I was quite happy with the new look, and I decided I would not do anything else to change my appearance for fear I might be discovered and the prize taken away. I started to develop an overwhelming concern for the box. I wanted to make it safe and keep it out of the reach of any other person. I found a good hiding place so the box could not be seen. It seemed that I began to love the box for what it had done for me. I would check on it every time I returned home. It only took a month to decide I needed more improvement to my face than I had already received. I once again got the beautiful little box out and set it in front or sat in front of it. I did once again what I had done before. I had said once again what I had said before. And this time I received a full, lush head of hair. The gray beginning to fade away. My skin was as smooth as a 40-year-old's skin. I felt as though I had drank with the pleasures that the beautiful little box gave me. I felt as though I was drunk with the pleasures that the beautiful little box gave me. I felt high with life all the time now. My wonderful wife was still in her 60s and unable to keep up with me. I didn't even notice her as she began to feel alone from my inattention. All that mattered was the beautiful little box. It had become precious to me. The next heading for this part of the book or story is Desires Met. I now look like I did when I was only 40 years old, and I was full of energy and almost anything almost anything I wanted. The younger women flirted with me openly now, as I also flirted with them. My wife, now feeling shame for me and the pain caused from my open and bold flirtations, I began to behave as if she were not there with me. I had what I wanted and was not ashamed to flaunt it. I had my youth, and I was able to endure the chastisement of my wife leveled against me. My friends also wanted to desert me because of my actions. I didn't seem to care what she or said or did any longer, and my friends mattered even less. I had what I had desired for many years. This was not just trying to hang on to my youth, it was regaining my youth. The price for my youth was I was leaving all my friends behind and my devoted wife with a broken heart. I could not see the results of what I had become as long as the little box was fulfilling all my desires and it was safely within my control. I felt powerful and in complete control of my destiny. I started chasing younger women and being rebuffed by those in their 20s. I felt the need to go to the precious box, to reach back to the 20s, so that the lovely younger women would not be denied to me. The next heading is The Great Changes. I found myself going to the box every week for one improvement or another. I became so vain that only my appearance was important to me. I had lost my dearest friends and my greatest resource, my faithful and devoted wife. I soon was lost, where soon was not recognizable from where I had started. The senior citizens of 63 was a boy now appearing as that of an 18-year-old boy. And the foolishness of an 18-year-old came with me to this point. I could never be satisfied with what I looked like, and every day I began to use the box. That is, when I began to feel like a curse. I had to change this or I had to change that to attract this girl or that girl. I was never satisfied. I was like a bee moving from flower to flower until all the flowers were afraid of me. I had become as ugly on the inside as I was afraid I was on the outside before this all began. The next heading is regret. I now wish that I had not found the beautiful carved box with the two mirrors and the magic spell. I know that a thing earned is worth many things given, and a thing given can only bring joy when it has been given in and with love. The youth I had sought and found was a great curse, greater than the skin that tormented me before all this began. My desire had cost me the love of my life and every friend I had before this began, and every friend I made along the way. I am utterly alone and I am lonely. I miss my dear wife and the friends that had come along with me through the years of discovery and the wisdom that comes from that journey. Now it is just I and my regrets to keep me company. Oh, that I could back this all up and start again with the wisdom that this trip had given me. I would never use the power of the box, and I would never change what God has given me. All of the things that troubled me then are the things that I desire now. I had all that I wanted before I started this journey down a very dark road. I went back to the box to try to undo what I had done, and the box would not make me look older, only younger. And before I knew it, I was a 10-year-old boy and cursed the box. Dismay is the title of the next portion of the story. I now resign myself to a life that will end in less than 10 years because I am still near 70 and I am destitute and all alone. I can never regain what wonderful things I had lost and the companionship of a soulmate. Beauty is not worth the price of one dear friend, and certainly not a loving and devoted friend such as a wife from your youth. I will never be happy again because of the knowledge of what I have done to myself and to all those I loved. I see before me now long days with overwhelming pain and a heart that shall never mend. I close my eyes and ask for death to find me, and a great stillness came over me, and a quiet kind of peace settled upon me as darkness filled my view. Reality is the final portion of this story. I was startled by the sound of an alarm screaming relentlessly into my ears and drawing me back to a world of light and sound. I was on my bed, and there next to me was my devoted wife, and all was at peace. I had been in a dark place in my dreams and found a profound truth that I already have all that I wanted or hoped for in what God has supplied to me. When we were up and finished with breakfast, my dear wife asked if I wanted to go shopping at some antique malls she had heard about, and I said, I will never go to another antique mall. Shop as long as I live. She looked at me strangely and said, as you wish. I hope you enjoyed this story. It was made up when I had to go with my wife to do some antique shops, and I didn't like it. I wrote this after the last time I went, and I don't think I went to another one. I hope you enjoyed this. Next presentation will be chapter 8, Out the Window, and it is a true story. At that time, my wife drove a shuttle bus for seniors, taking them to doctor's offices and such, and grocery shopping. And so when we bought a house in Alabama, and we lived in Florida, she drove about half of the time, and I drove about half the time. And she was driving when this happened, and I think it's a cute story. I hope you'll enjoy it when I get to it. If you've liked what I do, uh, hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell, and you'll be notified every time I present a story. Uh, I think there's only one or two more stories in this one till we're through. Let me go back here at the beginning and see. Let's see. Okay, there's Out the Window, which is what I'll do next. And then The Power of Love to Endure is the last one. And that's when I started writing Love Endures All Things. So we'll move on to that when that's finished. Uh, if you get in a hurry and can't wait for these, you can go to my web page, which is curtis-jones-books.squarespace.com. And there's a link that will connect you to Amazon where all these books are posted. And you can find the ones you like and get a look at all 17. This place gives you a description of each book and what they're like. I hope you enjoyed what we do. And by the way, the Curtis Jones author page on Facebook has pretty much the same thing. That this one's in more detail though. God bless you and keep you and enjoy life. Remember, sometimes the things we've got are worth far more than the things we want. God bless you.